So let's get to the Democratic side of the equation here. We already teased a little bit that Joe Biden's fundraising also had some question marks attached to it. Let's go ahead and put this up on the screen from the New York Times. You know, a little bit of similar vibes with the DeSantis campaign in that he raised a good amount of money. He raised more than $10 million, actually, in 36 hours from wealthy Democrats. Trips to Chicago and New York netted millions more, as did fundraising events around Washington, they write, proving the party's big donor class is fully committed to Mr. Biden's reelection campaign. However, the small dollar online money spigot that helped Mr. Biden smash fundraising records in 2020 has not yet turned on, and there are ample signs that it may be months before it does. I would say that there's a question mark whether it ever does. They raised $10.2 million from small donors between the Biden campaign and the Biden Victory Fund. Those are those who gave $200 or less during this quarter. And for context, that's about half of what Barack Obama and his reelect was able to get from small dollar donors during the same time frame. Now, I will say something that is a benefit to Biden that is different from DeSantis is he's not really doing anything, so his burn rate is very low. Like, they're not really spending money at all. And again, to be clear, like, Joe Biden has a lot of money, big donors on the Democratic side. They're all in for him. They're continuing to raise a lot of money from him. He has the advantage of all these different like party committees and whatever. So it's not just what he brings directly into his campaign. So he's got a big war chest. Money is not likely to be a big problem for him. I think it's more indicative of the fact that there is just negative excitement for Joe Biden, even among the Democratic Party faithful. Yeah. The best you'll get out of people is like, I think he's done a pretty decent job. That's about it. And especially among young voters who in many ways feel betrayed by some of the promises that he has failed to deliver on and are, his approval rating has fallen off a cliff among that demographic in particular. There is little online enthusiasm for him, and there is next to no grassroots fundraising support for him. And so, we've been saying this for a long time, but their theory of the case is just 100%. You don't have to be excited about Joe. We're just going to get you energized about what the horrific alternative is. We're going to try to consolidate the anti-Trump forces within America, regardless of where they fall on the ideological spectrum. And their bet is that even with a high level of dissatisfaction among some core Democratic constituencies, that they will ultimately come home and vote for Biden because they do not want 4 more years of Donald Trump.
I actually thought it was really interesting, Krystal, to benchmark him against past presidents. So 4 years ago, in terms of the money raised by Trump and his joint fundraising committees while he was a sitting president, 35% of that money came from donors who gave $200 or less. For Biden, only 21% of funds to his campaign came from small donors. It also can benchmark him against former President Obama from the last time that he was running for re-election. Only $10.2 million in small dollar donations, as defined as those who gave $200 or less. That figure is half of the $21 million President Obama's campaign raised during that same period in 2012. So I think if you benchmark him against Obama and a Trump, also consider this, adjust for inflation, that's even more pathetic in terms of how much inflation that we've had over the last 10 years. So just think about that a little bit whenever we're benchmarking him to Obama. And the reason why that figure really stood out to me is Trump, obviously, he's like a god of small dollar donations. He's really up there in a league of his own with Bernie Sanders. They're really the only two to play the game at such a high level, getting average normal people to not only 1 or 2 times, but multiple times shell out lots of money on their behalf at a very wide scale. Trump's genius, I guess, was being able to do that and get billionaires to donate to his campaign. For Biden, whenever you're looking at this, consider the level of enthusiasm, if you can even call it that. We were both, I guess, involved in politics at the time, Krystal. Not that many people were into Barack Obama in 2012. And he was still able to raise $21 million at that time in small
I disagree with that. I think there's a key difference between Biden and Obama in that period. Even in 2012, as the hope and change, like some of that had worn off, Democrats still freaking love this guy.
That's true. They did love him.
I mean,
You're right.
Even in 2012, I was at MSNBC at the time, so I was at the beating heart of the pro-Barack Obama media, and the Democratic base really loved this guy, and they still do. I mean, in spite of all of you can see my monologues on him to see how I feel about him, but The Democratic base still really loves Barack Obama. Barack Obama is an extraordinarily talented politician. Joe Biden never had Barack Obama levels of enthusiasm. He certainly doesn't have them now, and he doesn't have Barack Obama levels of talent, especially at this point in his career. So I think the other thing that I was thinking about is, remember that Barack Obama campaign got off to a really early start and was very effective at defining Mitt Romney out of the gates.
Yes.
They spent a lot of money early. There was a lot of hand-wringing about their burn rate, something we're talking about Ron DeSantis with today. There was a lot of hand-wringing about that with the Obama campaign. But they ran these incredibly, brutally effective economic populist ads against Romney, defining him as the caricature of the out-of-touch rich guy elite. And that caricature stuck. Mitt Romney did his own damage, reinforcing that caricature at basically every turn. And now with the Biden campaign, it's the polar opposite. And in some ways it makes sense because, listen, we know who Donald Trump is, right? Mitt Romney was kind of squishily defined to the American public. So they thought that there was a real opportunity to go in we're going to define who this guy is on our terms, and we're going to fight this campaign on our terms. Worked really well. Here with the Biden campaign, their bet is everybody already knows Donald Trump. People feel however they feel about him. There's a lot of people who really hate this guy. And so we don't need to spend money early to define who he is and what he's all about and try to set the campaign on our terms because he does enough and his indictments will speak for themselves as well. So then you also have the fact that, unlike Barack Obama, Joe Biden is not, especially now, a very talented politician. And so they think it makes sense to basically not campaign right now. There are concerns, though, about this strategy. I found this report from CNN quite extraordinary. Let's put this up on the screen. So even at this late date, the headline is "Slow Pace of Biden's Re-elect Campaign Feeds Democrats' 2024 Anxiety." Even at this late date, you apparently still have top Democrats and donors who do not actually believe that Biden is going to really run for re-election, even though he's launched his campaign and he's raising money and he's at least done some minimal campaigning and securing certainly of union endorsements. They lead off this piece saying the conversations keep happening. Quiet whispers on the sidelines of events, texts, emails, furtive phone calls as top Democrats and donors reach out to those seen as possible replacement presidential candidates. Get ready, they urge in conversations that aides to several of the people involved have described to CNN. Despite what he has said, despite the campaign that has been announced, President Joe Biden will not actually be running for re-election. They feel like time is already running out and that the lack of the more robust campaign activity they want to see is a sign that his heart really isn't in it. Now, I have always thought, even before he really made it clear that he was running for re-election, I have always thought at the end of the day, Democrats would have to get on board with Joe Biden because they have a Kamala Harris problem, because he's in the White House and because he wants another 4 years too, by the way.
Yes.
So I continue to think that these people, this is all wishful thinking and presidential fanfic more than anything. But it does show you that there is deep concern among, Democratic Party elites that Joe Biden's heart isn't really in it, that he's not campaigning, and that they may have a real problem come general election time, even if it is against Donald Trump.
Yeah, I think, the point that you made earlier is just the best one. At the end of the day, it's not going to be about money for the sitting president and Trump. Everyone will have plenty of money. This is going to be a multi-billion-dollar election in terms of all the outside groups. It really is just a metric of how many real people are really enthused about this. Not many. And that, is always going to remain an issue. But for the donors, there is and remains the fanfic, as you said, the idea of the West Wing type President Bartlett just coming in to swoop, take over, and just
over
finally
Gavin Newsom or whatever.
Newsom is the perfect Bartlett type candidate. The ubermensch liberal who's able to sweep in and finally deliver all of the promises that they've been unable to get since the Bill Clinton era. Never ends up happening, though, in terms of the actual president, but doesn't stop them from dreaming.
True. Liz Smith, Pete Buttigieg's
Yes.
former campaign manager, she's quoted in this piece. I think she puts her finger on the pulse of what the Democratic elite are thinking. She says, what motivates people is less love of their party, but hatred of the other candidate. A lot of enthusiasm will come for voting against Republicans. That is what they're betting on. But you also have long-term Democratic fundraiser who said, I'm not sure which is harder, getting people to focus on the campaign or getting people excited about it. If Trump wins next November and everyone says, how did that happen? One of the questions will be, what was the Biden campaign doing in the summer of 2023? So
Very possible.
they think the strategy makes sense to kind of sit back and let Trump hang himself and the indictments play out and conserve their cash and keep their guy out of the spotlight. To be honest with you, I think they're probably right about that strategy. But the best news that the Biden campaign has gotten so far is the fact that the economic numbers, inflation cooling, like that looks a little bit better, even as people are still really not feeling that in terms of their everyday lives. But I got to tell you, I think they got big problems coming up. I think they've got big problems for 2024. I think that the fact that you've got a few potential third-party candidates, I mean, we already know we've got Cornel West in there, that you may have this no labels candidate. It only takes just a little bit off of Joe Biden, or even, the independents who didn't like him and didn't like Trump and voted for him, like just a few of them to go in the other direction for him to be on the other side of an election loss. And I think they got a lot of problems.
Yeah, I mean, this is where age comes back to bite you. Like, you're supposed to fight like your life depends on it. Act like it, man. This is the most important job in the entire world. You got to go, literally go, like, die trying. Either fight or die trying, in terms of winning. That's how the best politicians have always acted. I've read, previously, but Lyndon Johnson and Richard Nixon, two people who won the greatest electoral victories in modern American history. They thought they were going to lose up until the end. They still literally obsessed over the details up until Election Day. That's what it takes for people who are actual winners.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. So we'll see how it all plays out. Hey guys, if you like that video, go to breakingpoints.com, become a premium subscriber, and help us build the best independent media organization on the planet.
That's right. We're subscriber funded. We're building something new. We want to replace these failing mainstream media organizations.
So again, to subscribe, it's breakingpoints.com.